You're listening to the Send It Podcast with Andrew Rawls on World Talk Radio.
Grumman 7 Judah Bravo, then ground, turn right on Bravo, runway 18 left, Bravo, and it'll merge with Alpha at Alpha 3.
So again, I just wanted to remind everyone that we have some great t-shirts that have been printed by a friend of mine on the Send It Podcast website. These t-shirts are incredibly comfortable. They're tri-blend. I'm actually wearing one right now. You can buy yours today by visiting senditradio.com. Click the link on our homepage or in any of the podcast episodes. Again, with the new website and new show, we've got special pricing on these and they look great. So head on over to senditradio.com and pick up your t-shirt and support the show today. Now, this is an episode that I've had a lot of requests for. As a licensed skydiver, what are my thoughts on what's been happening on the West Coast, the northern West Coast, I should say, at the Lodi Parachute Center? Well, to start, what brings me here is there has been a $40 million judgment that was awarded this past spring. A young man passed away in 2016 on a tandem skydive. From all the information that I've read, it shows that both the main and the reserve canopies failed, and the bright young man who passed away, he had scholarships, I think, to some state schools and really had a bright future and a good head on his shoulders. The family ended up winning a $40 million judgment against the Lodi Parachute Center and owner Bill Dawes, who I'll get into in a second. But, I think that the judgment more than anything was just designed to get this place to close its doors for good. Let's take a step and back up here. I want to give you a brief history of this operation before I comment on it. So the Lodi Skydiving Center, whatever you call it, was opened in 1964 and it's owned by Bill Dawes. Now, Lodi is south, I believe, of Sacramento. I've never been there before. I'll get into some reasons why here in a bit, but it's non-USPA affiliated, and I think that's because that they've attempted to sue the USPA in the past, and there's been 24 deaths since 1981. Now, I couldn't go back before this episode and find all of them. It's roughly 24 deaths since that time. Now, it's widely known they have some issues with safety at this place, not the least of which is aircraft maintenance. In 2010, they being the Lodi Parachute Center, were fined over $700,000 for operating planes, and I don't know if it's 2,600 times they fired the plane up or they carried fun jumpers, but the planes were used without A&P maintenance for over 2,600 times in operation. The airport was also fined as well, and then they had that huge plane crash in 2016, and you can see all this on YouTube where somebody had their camera on and it looks like they just did a big donut and crashed out in one of the rosary bushes or wine fields, and those run south of the drop zone. I'm not really sure what the FAA determined was the reason for the plane crash, but nevertheless, there were some major mechanical and maintenance issues, and I think it stemmed from an engine going out, and that plane was a Cessna 206. Probably the most scariest incident I've seen at Lodi, and this footage was taken. It went viral on social media. I think most of the major morning news stations picked it up as well, was when Laverne Everett in 2012, again, this was only a couple of years after they had been fined by the FAA, fell out of her tandem harness, and moreover, if you look at the video, the 80-year-old woman was pushed out of the plane and then she was suspended. Had her legs actually came out of the leg strap, she was inverted, she would have most certainly fallen to her death. It was one of the wildest things I've ever seen in any shape, way, or form. Again, from her being pushed out of the plane to falling out of the harness, clearly the tandem instructor instructor whose name I don't have had no business or clue what he was doing in taking a customer out to skydive. The harness wasn't tightened down. You can definitely see it in the video. And then, of course, per the terms and conditions, what you need in order to become a tandem instructor, he pushed this lady who was holding on to the side of the fuselage out of the plane, and there they went. So it was one of the wildest, scariest things I've ever seen. Again, this woman was 80 years old. So there you go right there. Within a matter of 2 to 3 years, you've got some really crazy shit going on at this drop zone. You know, it may be, from what I've read, the only place in the world that takes people that are 300 pounds on tandem skydives. I know in my local operation, you actually have to be under 220 pounds. And while I realize the TSO on the Sigma, it looks like that Skydive Lodi uses the Sigma containers, which also surprises me that UPT would sell the tandem containers to Lodi, given the safety issues that they have there. But the TSO on those Sigmas is 500 pounds. Now, we all know that they can hold much more than 500 pounds. In fact, you know, I've been out to Rayford and I've seen that the Sigma containers that are issued to the military, they basically have the TSO that they've gotten for, and they just slap a TSO 1000 sticker onto the back of the container, and it's essentially the same thing. But that's still, I've never heard of people taking other people in tandem skydives that weigh 300 pounds, nor would I recommend any tandem instructor test the gear and try that out. Again, this is a non-USPA affiliated drop zone, and it's located right off Interstate 99, again in Northern California, just south of Sacramento. One of the major problems that they have out there is that if you're not current, if you're not a good canopy pilot, and you don't know what you're doing, and you don't check the winds of loft, a bad spot out there can cost you your life. Now, the first time I'd really heard about this place was when I was up near Skydive, Pennsylvania, and a guy who was packing my container told me about this place out in California, that he had never seen anything like it before. He told me that they had people that were not making it back to the drop zone and hitting tractor trailers on the major interstates, and that there were more deaths at this place than all the other drop zones combined. I actually, at the time, didn't believe him, and then went in and investigated myself, and that's when all these YouTube videos pulled up of people falling out of tandem harnesses, the LSD, the drugs, all the stuff that goes on at this place while folks are jumping and while it's in operations. And I couldn't believe that there were actually people, like I said, that were landing off, not landing south or north, but landing east of the drop zone on the Interstate Highway 99. And yeah, I mean, there's been multiple people that have died that way, hitting a semi because they can't make it back to the drop zone. And there you go. You know, I guess the ultimate thing, and I'm going to get into this more specifically here in a bit, but the owner, Bill Dawes, he really doesn't have any empathy or remorse. And I don't think the man is ever actually, you know, you could make a very strong case that he's been responsible for more deaths in the sport of skydiving than anybody else. He doesn't seem to have any empathy, or he doesn't seem like he honestly cares about people that have chosen to skydive and it's cost them their life. You know, he simply thinks that he's operating a platform for people to go out and do whatever they want, and then that absolves him from any type of liability or responsibility in skydiving, which couldn't be further from the truth. But I just get the sense after watching multiple videos, interviews that have been conducted with this guy, and I know that the media can sometimes be grueling, that, you know, there's just very little remorse or sympathy to the people that come through his drop zone and actually died. I get a weird vibe about this guy. My only experience with Skydive Lodi, and I thought this was a weird one, was that in 2020, I had called around and tried to get a good deal on hop and pop jumps for winter training. And this was before, you know, I did a lot of research, and, you know, I wanted to cheat. Again, most of the people that go out to Lodi, they go out there because the ticket prices are so cheap. I had heard from somebody there was a place I needed to check out. You know, where am I going to go? It really didn't make sense for me to head all the way out there from the East Coast anyways, unless it was just too good of a deal to be true. They are open 365, 7 days a week. But yeah, I called out there, and I guess it was Bill that I spoke with, and he told me that, you know, at the time, I think he would allow me to do 400 hop and pops for $4,000. And I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is great, right? And then he told me, you know, I wanted to get in writing that those would be from, you know, over 5,000 feet. And he told me that no, that they'd be dropping me out at 2,500 feet, which is right around BSRs for USPA Student Information Manual. And I just said, no way. I couldn't believe that actually he was going to do that. But yeah, I passed, of course, right? So yeah, it's well documented, the deaths and the aircraft maintenance issues that they have out there. And then you circle back around to this $40 million judgment, how weird it gets for a place like Lodi. First of all the operation, the guy doesn't have $40 million. And again, I think that judgment was put into place to prevent them from continuing business operations. That's the only way I can think, because there's no skydiving business out there except for maybe one or two that's worth $40 million, right? And then if he owed that kind of money, it would prevent people from jumping out there ever again, right? Maybe they figured if, he doesn't have the money, certain payments that are made towards that amount that was in the judgment, even though it's not maybe 100% of what the revenue is for that DZ in a month, it's going to take up a certain percentage of it, and that may prevent them from conducting operations that over time they may go insolvent, right? But, I haven't heard what the terms are going to be on that. All I've heard is that things just kind of keep getting weirder. So that $40 million judgment against Lodi back in the spring of 2021, several months ago, the award was based on the fact that the young man who passed away, his parents and the lawyers uncovered that the gentleman who took the young man on a tandem who passed away in 2016, Yong Kwong of South Korea, was given a tandem license by an illegitimate tandem instructor by the name of Robert Allen Pooley. Apparently, this guy was a long-time jumper at Skydive Lodi Parachute Center, but this Pooley guy had been banned by the USPA and also at the time had his name scratched from the United Parachute Technologies Sigma website. What they've uncovered, and they being the attorneys of the parents, again, of the young man who passed away in 2016, was that this Pooley had forged the signature of another legitimate examiner. I guess he worked out at Skydive Lodi on 6 tandem instructors certification cards, including the guy from South Korea who took this young man on the jump that killed him back in 2016. So because we're talking about skydiving and aviation in California, this is grounds for federal charges. So this guy was arrested, I believe, last month. They came in and they also raided the Lodi Parachute Center. And this Robert Pooley, the one that was doing all the forging of signatures, right now, as I see it, he's going to end up either doing some time in the Gray Bar Hotel, certainly going to be banned from the sport of skydiving for life, and he may be part of a lawsuit that has yet to be filed yet. So I guess the really messed up part about this is even after the arrest, the Pooley guy continues to come out to the Lodi Parachute Center and jump, and the owner, Bill Dawes, allows him to continue to do so despite the charges, despite the fact that he forged signatures, despite the fact that he ended up costing someone their life. It's just, it's hard to believe. So what are my thoughts on all this? Well, there's plenty of places to jump. Now, just because a drop zone isn't affiliated with USPA does not make it any less safer or legitimate, in my humble opinion. The USPA charges fees to be members of their organization, and they have their own set of curriculum, whether you agree with it or not, that is recommended jumpers go through in order to become a licensed skydiver. They also are the ones handing out the cards. So if you want to go jump in Dubai, you want to go jump in Western Australia, you're probably not going to be able to get up in a plane unless you have a USPA license. That being said, I cannot, under any circumstances, recommend that anybody go out and do a tandem skydive or surely learn how to skydive through the Lodi Parachute Center. It's hard to believe a place like this is still in business with all the incidents and problems, the maintenance issues that they've had with their planes, the deaths, the lack of responsibility. I'm sitting here listening right now to an interview with the owner, Bill Dawes. And again, listen to this clip I have teed up right here where he talks about that the instructors and those tandem examiners are merely using his center as a place to conduct business operations, and he doesn't have anything to do with it.
This parachute center has a lot of, I don't know if you want to call them independent contractors. I don't call them that. They're not independent contractors. They're instructors in a lot of different aspects of skydiving. They come out and instruct in skydiving, whether it's wingsuits, head down, freestyle, accuracy. There's, over the years, literally hundreds of different people have instructed here. We offer the facility and the airplane ride.
And he taught tandem diving courses to instructors, to other instructors here?
Yes.
Okay. And that's all under the FAA's jurisdiction, is that right?
Well, aviation is under the FAA jurisdiction, yes.
So the federal government is saying he was unauthorized.
Well, no, the federal government thinks he was unauthorized. He hasn't been convicted of anything to my knowledge.
What about the charges against him? The fact that
You need to talk to him about that. I'm not. You can read the court documents and make your own assumption. I don't,
But I guess as the owner of this business, how does that reflect on business?
Well, look at what's going on. It definitely reflects on business.
So as you heard, this guy refuses to accept any type of responsibility of the injuries and fatalities that have occurred at his drop zone. It's really actually quite sad because he is responsible for the instructors who teach at his drop zone. And if there's any suspicion whatsoever that there's people that are doing things that aren't by the book, that are against the guidelines of the FAA, or may endanger a customer or a student, then it's his job as drop zone owner to fire them and ban them from the drop zone, which he didn't do. And in this case, he's actually allowing the individual, that's Pooley, the guy with the bogus tandem examiner rating, to come back on the property even after he was arrested in Skydive. So I don't get it. And I'm actually hoping that while this may be a default judgment of $40 million, it ends up closing the doors on this place for good. So I mean, I understand the place is cheap. It's an attraction for people in the area. They feel like, everybody takes care of themselves. But if you're having maintenance issues on planes, you can't have that and continue to operate a public drop zone like this. It reflects poorly on the sport. And look, I have no beef with this drop zone. I've never been out there. I never want to go out there. All I'm looking to do is promote safety. And again, I don't even know what their curriculum looks like to become a licensed jumper, but I would never recommend somebody going out to this place and learning how to fly. Nor would I recommend anybody going out there and doing a tandem. And I pray that somebody hears this episode before they go out there and jump. There's plenty of people that just look at Google. They even look at the ratings, the Google ratings, and they just jump without doing any of their own due diligence and research. And, it really sucks to die in this sport and you can't even control your own fate. Well, you can, but, the aircraft maintenance issue, which again can happen at any drop zone, but at least most of the drop zones that are in good standing with the FAA and USPA do some kind of their own inspections and or aircraft maintenance to keep things up to standard. I mean, I've had issues where I've had to bail out of the plane early, after 3,500, 4,000 feet, but not something like this, and not something where they would go back and investigate that all these repairs needed to be done on the plane, and then it continued to operate because the owner didn't feel like that the plane needed it. It absolutely boggles my mind. And maybe the folks, I think this is a public airport. I'm surprised that airport management, which the drop zone has to get agreement from, continues to allow them to operate, especially if the drop zone is not privately owned. So there will be more on this Lodi Skydiving Center here, and I guess in the next couple podcasts as new breaking developments come out. But again, I would just highly recommend staying away from this place and finding somewhere else to jump.
You've just listened to Send It, a skydiving podcast hosted by Andrew Rawls on World Talk Radio. Send It is the #1 skydiving podcast on the planet, bringing listeners up-to-date information on all things sky sports. Be sure to visit senditradio.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our amazing bonus content and articles. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review. Until next time, 3, 2, 1. See ya.